But I will switch to English for the benefit of those that cannot speak German, and I know that some have that problem. So since we are here today talking about the community of German research software engineers, the first question that we asked ourselves is, well, how old is that community? What do you think? Well, it's research software engineers, so how old is research software? Certainly 2 digits, maybe 30, 50, 40, but that community isn't that old, right? So software in research has been around for decades now, but how old is the community really? Well, we kind of defined the beginning in Germany, at least, to be in 2016. That's quite late, right? But that is when it started in Germany, at least what we think. And that was at the first conference of research software engineers worldwide, as far as we know. It was also a first, like today, but at that moment in the UK. So I don't know about the others that went to that conference, and I see a few faces that I remember from back then. But at that moment, I didn't really have a good idea of what a research software engineer is. It kind of sounded interesting, so I went. Not knowing what I was getting myself into. But what happened there is not only British people came, but essentially people all over the world, and especially 3 German people that at the end, towards the end of the conference, met and said, well, why don't we have that in Germany? So who could we ask? There was nobody. So let's do it. So that we told ourselves, let's start something like that in Germany. I mean, at that point, that movement was quite big already in the UK. But as far as we knew that back then, there was nothing like that in Germany. So once we were back home, we've set up a website, a Slack channel, mailing list, all that kind of stuff you need to actually get people involved, to connect people. And that was quick. I mean, after all, we are research software engineers, right? So we filled those channels and websites and so on with objectives, activities. We started networking with a lot of people, a lot of local groups especially. Started to have community calls. And just in general, started to raise awareness of research software. A second impulse came just a few months later at a workshop held by the Helmers Association, and the English title translated from German would be Access to and Reuse of Research Software. And if you read that title, that's just as important today as it was 3 years ago. But here you see already quite large group of people in Germany interested in what you are interested in today. What you also see on top right is that this wasn't a local initiative. It was really something that was Germany-wide already. So at some point we started tracking of how big is the, let's say, active part of the community. So we started tracking how many people do we have subscribed to our email list. And at some point we started to have a Twitter hashtag, so how many people followed that. And here you see the graphs produced by that. And you see that over the course of about 3 years, you do see a steady growth. You see some humps. And you also see that, I would like to get that a bit of attention, because that's a number of people that actually tell us where they are located, which then produces a nice map of Germany, which is always nice to have. So if you are active on one of the other two, please tell us where you are so we can actually add you to that list. One of the humps here is especially interesting, since that's quite a big one. And that was when another survey was done by the Software Sustainability Institute. That happened in 2018, or 17 in that case, So that is a yearly survey done for research software engineers and everyone who is connected to that community. And last year, almost 1,000 people actually answered that survey, which also means this year we would like to break the 1,000, please. So out of that, and that's not a Germany-wide one, that's an international one, right? You see that about one third comes from Germany. So there is a really large community in Germany. There's also a large community in the UK, in the US, and a few other countries. But that is essentially the list of active communities in the research software engineering world. So you see that Germany is, at the moment at least, on top there. Let's stay there. So if you want to know more about that survey, the link is down here. You have a lot of statistics, more interesting statistics there, stuff I do not want to get into here, but you have really, you can dig down into all the questions that have been asked, like what is actually your profession, what have you studied, what level of career you are in, and so on. So you can dig in there. And I've been told that probably there will be another survey this year, so remember to answer that one. Well, then about 2 years and a few months later, later than actually meeting initially, we finally managed to give ourselves some legal backbone, so to say, some legal form. So we formed an association. That's the thing to do in Germany if you would like to do something as a group and would like to have that legally done, usually. So that's what we did end of November last year. So there we had 20 initial members forming that association. And since then, we have been operating, setting up essentially all the legal ground structure that you need as association. But what we've done in parallel, and actually starting earlier than November last year, is organizing this conference. These two ideas essentially came at the same time. We wanted to have a conference because we started out at a conference, essentially. We wanted to have something as great as they have in the UK as here in Germany, right? So if you want to have a conference, you have to be able to sign contracts, to actually pay catering and so on. So you have to have someone actually backing all this. We didn't want to have a specific institution do that. So we thought we have to have our own association. That's one of the ideas why we actually have one. But that takes some time, and we wanted to have a conference this year. So that's why we did these two things in parallel, and with the really generous help from the GI, we actually have that conference this year, despite the Association for German Research Software not being the main organizer at that point. But so about 3 years after the initial Research Software Engineers Conference in the UK, we have the first Research Software Engineer Conference in Germany. And if you are interested in joining the association, we do have a booth right back in that corner where you should be able to find someone from us all the time and talk to us. It doesn't necessarily need, you don't necessarily need to become a member, although we very much would like that. But this community doesn't really live from, let's say, fees. It really lives from involvement, from activity, from people. You can help by just talking to your colleagues in your home institution, just raise awareness of the issue of research software, of software in research, which is not necessarily just a computer science issue, right? So with that, I would like to say thanks again to the GI, the Association for Computer Science in Germany, who made this conference possible.